Welcome to Meme Reads. Today we'll be covering the subreddit r/nuclearrevenge. This next post is brought to you by Odin the American.
Don't kill your neighbor's dogs. My crazy, antisocial, elderly aunt lives in the mountains of West Virginia. My aunt is a mean, bitter old woman who is suspected of shooting and killing her ex-husband, but the cops could never pin it on her. Years ago, she bought a small home on some land that borders the land of another family in a small, narrow, isolated, forested mountain valley. The other family had been living there for a long time, and they just wanted to be left alone, like most people who chose to live in a remote mountain location in West Virginia. My aunt bought chickens and started to let them run around unfenced and on her property, and the neighbors' dogs were very interested in those chickens. The chickens would roam around and go over onto the neighbor's property. One day, without warning, she killed her neighbor's dogs for killing one of her chickens, and only one of the dogs was killed on her property. The other one was shot dead in the neighbor's front yard. The neighbors had small kids and they loved those dogs. My aunt walked over with the shotgun still in her hand and told the neighbors that they had better never get another chicken-killing dog again or else she would kill them too. The neighbors didn't take too kindly to her killing their dogs, and her actions with the shotgun, waving it around and threatening them was way over the top. But they didn't call the cops. They knew that my crazy aunt, who had a reputation for being violent, was unlikely to be arrested, and if she was arrested, she would just quickly be released from jail and be back. So a couple weeks after the incident, my aunt went into town, and while she was out, her back window was broken, and a bottle of burning oil and gas was thrown into her home. By the time the fire department finally arrived, the home was a complete loss. And every dog and possibly ex-husband killing shotgun and firearm my aunt owned, along with all of her other worldly possessions, were incinerated. The home was a total loss, along with the chicken coop and everything else. Well, the neighbors didn't see nothing, and the sheriff's department couldn't prove anything. My aunt had a long list of enemies. She didn't work, and she was too poor and lazy to have homeowner's insurance, so she had to move, and her son eventually bought her a cheap, run-down trailer in town. Those of us who knew my aunt figured that she got what she deserved. Moral of the story, don't screw with the mountain man's dog. I just want to state that I in no way, shape, or form justify what they may or may not have done to that woman's house. However, this woman sounds like a real piece of work, and what goes around comes around. I'm not saying that she deserved it, but, don't mess with other people's dogs, man.
This next post comes from the user BrittyBird. Guy tries to sell the house out from under my family, gets his just desserts. My family was looking for a large house and they found the perfect one back in the early 2000s. When my dad talked to the owners, they had agreed to get some plumbing fixed on the house before we moved in, and if we moved some of their stuff into the 2-car garage, it'd be easier for them to move. There was also several things that needed to be repaired, a pool that needed to be cleaned, and tons of landscaping to be done. My dad did the repairs and used his army of offspring to do all the landscaping, pool work, etc. The house was looking amazing compared to before, and we were a week from moving in. Now to this day, I do not know why my dad did this, but he paid a cash deposit. There was no paper trail, and the owners decided to take advantage of this. When it got to be a few days before he moved in, the owner told my dad that they weren't moving their stuff out of the garage or doing the plumbing fixes, that they needed to use any of the bathtubs or showers. He could deal with no garage and pay for the plumbing fixes, or he could buck off. No refund of deposit if he didn't like it. They even said they were already thinking of moving somebody else in because the house has more value with all the fixes we had already done. My father asked to turn in the keys we had been given the next morning because he was told at 8 p.m. on a weekday. With no paperwork yet signed and there was nothing attaching my dad to the house and no cameras or security system, and he had just been screwed over for a few $1,000s by the owner, and it was maybe 2 weeks to Christmas. His gift that year was going to be giving each of us our own rooms for the very first time. Cue the revenge. He brought all of us kids over to the house for a little party. Each kid would be given their own special bit of destruction. Someone was shoveling sand into the pool. My brother with anger issues was told to punch every hole that we had patched up in the walls. The smaller kids were told to rock the banisters on the stairs until it broke. I was told to rip out the landscaping we had done and make it path all over the stairs. Every single thing we had fixed or improved had been taken back by very creative and energetic children. While all this is happening, my dad and stepmom went through everything in the garage from the owners and took anything they could gift to family, pawn, or sell. There was a lot of things in there, like high valuable collectibles, jewelry, and even a computer that my dad gave me for Christmas. The next day, my dad told the owners that he had put the keys in the garage with the door wide open that night for him. Then he unplugged the phone, and we never heard from those people again. Was it legal? No, not on their end either. Did we have a good Christmas? Heck yeah, we did. Was it fun destroying the place? Oh, totally. I actually did a very tasteful carpet of hedge branches, torn flowers, and some sand and pool gravel on the actual carpet of the house. Usually on the subreddit NukeRevenge, you see people go overboard with people who actually deserve it, but it's still a little bit overboard. However, in this story, I feel like they did do nuclear revenge, but these people actually deserved it. If they're gonna screw you out of thousands of dollars and work, you should screw them out of work and thousands of dollars. Equal is equal. This next post is from r/pettyrevenge and is from the user itsnick_03. A creative way that I kept my a-hole neighbor awake during the day. So to start this story off, let me give a little bit of backstory. A few years ago, we had a couple buy a house 2 up from us in the street. They did renovations for the first couple of months, 7 days a week from 6 in the morning. As annoying as it can be being woken up on a Sunday morning by power saw, my fiance and I know that if you live near people, you're gonna hear noise, so we just rolled with it. Everything changed after the renovations were finished. The guy went back to working the night shift, and all of a sudden, our street had to be silent during the day so he could get sleep. This self-entitled grunt went to great lengths to get his beauty sleep. He called the police for noise complaints any chance he got. My hippie neighbors who had their weekly afternoon jam sesh with acoustic guitars, my Vietnamese neighbors and their god-awful Thursday afternoon karaoke, and then it was my turn. Complaint after complaint went into the council about noise from my dogs and chickens. He'd walk in front of my fence and wait for my dog to bark at him and then record it and send it to the council. Then he discovered my dog was controlled. For those who don't know, this means that my dog's not allowed out of the yard without a leash. One day, I left the gate open to bring the shopping in, and Grunty McFrickface filmed my dog walk 3 meters out of my yard to the car and then sent it to the council, and I received an $800 fine in the mail. This was the last straw. Since I'm a builder, I have access to a lot of noisy stuff. Grinders, chainsaws, metal cutoff saws, etc. Since I own my own company, it's not always necessary for me to be on site. I waited for him to get home, gave him an hour to get comfortable, and then began cutting rebarb with a 2-stroke cutoff saw right in front of my yard in 50mm sections. This took all of 15 minutes before he burst out of his house with his cranky pants on. I couldn't keep a straight face, as I told him I was quite within my rights to work around the house during the day, just as he had. Then I told him I'd had weeks of work, so I'd better get back to it. The look on his face brought me the purest joy I'd ever felt. I'd give him about 30 minutes to settle in, and then start cutting again for about 10-15 minutes. Chainsaws, power saws, it didn't matter because everything I cut was going in the bin anyway. It was only a couple weeks before I got bored and ran out of stuff to cut, but in the time I took every single opportunity I could to drive that jerk to insanity. I don't know why, but this one's just so satisfying and irks me so much. Like, you were so nice to the guy and put up with his construction BS for so long, which, to be fair, you should just put up with construction BS. Everyone's gonna have some construction every now and then. However, when it was his turn to deal with everybody else's BS in the neighborhood, he was like, "Oh, everybody needs to work around me. Everybody needs to be quiet because I work at night." Like, come on, dude, get over yourself. Everyone worked around you, you work around everybody else. Just be a good neighbor. It's really not that hard, man. Also, OP, as a side note, you should be nice to your Vietnamese neighbors. They sound like really fun people. Karaoke's fun. You should ask your neighbors if you could come over and try it sometime. I bet you'd have fun.
This next post is from r/nuclearrevenge and is by Ultimate Odie. My ex-fiance refused to respect my boundaries, so I married his best friend. Back in 2019, I had just moved my long-term partner into my house due to a series of poor life choices on his end. It had been a rocky relationship for most of its duration, but I was young and dumb. I believed that this was him wanting to commit and truly start our lives. By early 2020, we were engaged. I was a full-time university student, sole caretaker of my mentally disabled mother, and taking care of the house and our pets. He worked a standard 40-hour-week minimum wage job and refused to help any aspect of life. I found out on Christmas Day 2020 that he had been unfaithful and had forgotten to tell me. He was planning on leaving me, but had informed everyone except for me because he was failing to secure a new residence. Apparently, his little girlfriend didn't like him enough to let him move in. At this point, it was very little love lost, and I expected that he would be moving out within the coming weeks. Fast forward an entire 3 months, and his quote, search for a living place was non-existent, and he was acting more and more entitled. Clearly, by this point, he was an unwelcomed freeloader who has taken up residence in my living room. I was about to secure an eviction notice to get him off my couch. He began swiping Tinder on his phone with the volume turned up really loud, and I told him not to do that in my presence as it was highly insensitive to do that in my home and he could do that in private. This continued, so I told him that I'd sleep with one of his friends. This was said in a moment of anger and it was more of an empty threat at the time. However, I am known for seeing goals to their completion. I messaged the guy who was supposedly my ex-fiance's best friend and the best man for the wedding. It turns out that he didn't even consider my ex as a close friend, and my ex acted pretty terrible to this guy as well. We bonded over a terrible experience and hit it off really well in general, and started dating. I was upfront about what the catalyst for me to reach out to him was, and after 2 years of dating, we were married on April 2nd. He watched me graduate with that bachelor's degree that my ex-fiance disliked. I'm halfway through my master's, and my husband works in a specialized study field that supports us. Last I heard, my ex got kicked out of his dad's house. never was able to officially date that side chick, and has not made any choices to better his life. The revenge in this story is just phenomenal. I mean, you married his best friend and you went on to live a happy, fulfilling life? While he's probably watching from afar, regretting that he ever cheated on you. Anyways, Uppy, 10 out of 10. I wish you and your husband the best.
If you've gotten this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. If you really enjoy our content, please like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.